Emily Taylor, Houston-based attorney with Walker and Taylor, full-service criminal and civil defense firm, and they focus on gun law cases. Counselor, thank you for being with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
After Uvalde, a lot of people are lamenting no gun control, but lots of school fortification. And I went through this. I gave it a cursory look, and then I went back and highlighted some of the areas. 1 year after the Uvalde mass shooting, I guess lawmakers are getting ready to pass some measures that they say are going to make schools safer, even though some people are calling for more gun control. And let me just say this, and I don't know if you agree or disagree. You and I haven't talked before this. The reason gun control, taking people's guns away, doesn't work is the same reason what we do to try to handle the homeless problem doesn't work. I mean, you could warehouse the homeless in the Taj Mahal, and unless you deal with the root cause, which in many cases, not all, but many, alcohol and drug addiction, mental illness, things of that nature. It doesn't matter where you put them, you still have the problem. Just like with guns, guns don't jump out of the drawer, load themselves, and go off looking for victims. They're being used by people that have some very serious issues. When are we going to get that?
Well, I wish I could tell you the answer. I think perhaps when the 24-hour news cycle goes away and politicians aren't clamoring for the best sound bite to immediately hit the air might be the answer.
Yeah, I think you're right. You've been around, obviously. These politicians fall over themselves and the furniture and everything else trying to get in front of a TV camera. That's the most dangerous place to be in most cases. But as I looked at this, it makes a lot of sense. There's $100 million grant to pay for security upgrades, I guess, panic buttons and all the classrooms, as they did after the 2018 Santa Fe high school shooting. I guess they opted to further the fortifying the schools, and I guess even give teachers or school personnel the right to arm themselves. And I've said this forever. Coming from a family of law enforcement, my son-in-law is still a sergeant with the K-9 division. God forbid from my mouth to his ear, but you hear glass breaking downstairs at 4 a.m. What are you going to do? You're going to grab your weapon, grab your cell phone, check and make sure everybody's in bed and not coming in late, and then take up a position between the perceived threat and your family, dial 911 and hope they get there before you have to do something. Well, this whole idea of arming school personnel makes perfect sense. They're right there in the moment.
Absolutely. And when we look at the manifestos written by people who commit these sort of horrible atrocities, we see that they are looking for a high body count, and they are going places where they think they will encounter the least amount of armed resistance. And we also see in studies from the FBI that are going back decades now that once armed resistance arrives at the scene of an active shooting, that the chances that that active shooter actually just turns the weapon on themselves is very, very high. So
yeah.
It ends an active shooting. And I don't think there's anyone out there who's suggesting that the, wonderful kindergarten teacher in her 60s who's never held a gun before, who doesn't have any interest and doesn't want to get trained and doesn't want, be issued a Glock 19 and a helmet that says "Born to Kill" and sent on our way. I mean, what we have here is an option for those who are working within the school to carry, and training and all sorts of protections put in place there, as well as those little things you mentioned that are, not quite as sexy, but are incredibly important. I like to make the analogy to when we fireproofed and we looked at fire prevention in schools. We have, of course, fire drills, but we also have the design and the layout of schools being something that's easy for ingress and egress in case of a fire. We have fire retardant and fireproof materials that are installed and used. I mean, there's just layer upon layer upon layer of protection that needs to go into our schools for any given, hypothetical tragedy.
And, that's absolutely correct in my way of thinking. I know there's a constituency out there that believe, well, as long as you allow this type of weapon or that type of weapon, nothing's going to change. If anyone believes, and I'm not trying to be ugly here, as we say in the South, but if anyone believes all you have to do is ban guns and these shootings will stop, you're laboring under a sad misconception. If you look at the number of firearms in this country, there's no way you're going to get them all. And I don't know how you go about that anyway. But you've got to deal with the root cause, the root problem. And it's not the firearm. It's not the hardware. It's the software, the person that's got the issues.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there are two important points there to be made. One that murder certainly predated firearms, and interestingly, mass killings, mass shootings really post-dated the introduction of most modern firearms and the proliferation of most modern firearms in this country. So those are two very interesting things to think about. But also, yes, the people who say, well, no other country has this problem. Well, we have lots of other countries that are far less free who are worried about their ability to, simply live their life and practice their religion and not worship the, dear leader. But also we have an enshrined Second Amendment right here, which protects us against that kind of tyrannical government.
Right.
And for which we are not unringing a firearm bell. Even if you thought it was a good idea, which is certainly not where I fall, it is impossible in this country to unring a firearm bell a la Australia, which is the point that lots of people like to make. There are too many firearms on the street. There are too many firearms in private possession. And what you will do is simply disarm the law-abiding and leave the firearms in the hands of the people who are willing to break the law. Now, I would hope in that case that might be all of us and that mass noncompliance might be the answer. But realistically speaking, you're going to be taking them away from good people and leaving the criminal element unchecked.
Absolutely. And that's always been, I guess, one of my pet peeves with these gun buyback programs. If you're a carpenter, you're going to drive out to the job site in your truck. You got a skill saw in there, maybe, a hammer and a few other things. You're not going to give those up for a pair of basketball tickets. I mean, it makes no sense. Bad guys that use guns as a tool of the trade, they're not going to give those up to go to Six Flags. The only people, you're going to get broken down Grandpa's double-barrel shotgun and a few other things. But as I look at this, we've come to the point of critical mass, I think, in the sense that, all right, when are we going to realize that we're going after the wrong thing? We've got to deal with mental issues, alcohol addiction, drug addiction, and, quite honestly, without getting too esoteric here, the whole devolving of the human spirit and the loss of value for human life. I'm no world historian, but I can read, and that's what's happened to countries that, quite honestly, they don't exist anymore because they stopped valuing the quality of life and life itself. And we see that every day somewhere in the country. Talking with Emily Taylor, Houston-based attorney with Walker & Taylor. They're a full-service criminal and civil defense firm. They focus on gun law cases. Counselors, stay with me for just a second. Got to step away. I'm going to tell you what is driving the news now and what Governor Abbott may be getting ready to sign. Talking with Emily Taylor, Houston-based attorney with Walker & Taylor, a full-service criminal and civil defense firm, and they focus on gun law cases. We're talking about Uvalde 1 year later. A lot of people are, they've dug in their heels and they say, if you don't restrict the ability to purchase firearms, or if you don't ban this type of firearm or that, you haven't done anything. Well, that's not my point of view, and certainly you have a right to your opinion, but some of the measures that they're looking at would provide incentives to school employees to arm themselves on campus, require school safety inspections, mandate mental health training for teachers. They've already sent to Governor Greg Abbott a bill that would require school districts to install these silent panic buttons in every classroom. And first of all, thank you so much for sticking around. We got a couple of minutes left here. If you look at the big picture on this, there's no magic wand. You can't wave a wand and make this go away. But how do you get the message out that it's not the hardware, it's the software? Just the same reason we can't cure the homeless problem by warehousing people is the same reason we're not going to stop shootings by restricting guns. I mean, it seems so obvious to me. What am I missing?
Well, I'm not sure, and I don't think there's a way to convince the other side except to make them into gun owners. Because if you look at the anti-gun states, it is just a vicious snowball of a cycle in which they pass more gun control. It doesn't work, so they say to themselves, we need tighter gun control. And they pass more, and it doesn't work, and on and on and on. And, you look at states like New York, New Jersey, California as examples, but we can watch it happening in states like Washington and Michigan right now, who are becoming more and more anti-gun as measures continue to fail that are signed into law. And so my honest belief is, we were talking a little bit earlier about sort of the culture of mass shootings and gun violence and how it's not the tool, but it's other issues. And I truly believe, although I'm sure there are many out there who disagree with me, that one of the problems that makes gun violence and mass shootings so prevalent is that we have moved away from firearms as a society.
Yeah.
You don't see them as much. Young people aren't trained on them. You don't have, shooting teams and shooting sports in schools anymore. And so for many, and for those, unfortunately, who are suffering from some mental health issues, it can become this taboo tool of destruction and chaos when it should be a tool just like any other that's not meant for human death unless you're attacked and absolutely have to defend your life with it, just like a baseball bat.
You are exactly spot on. I know, my kids are now out of the house and starting their own families. Their mom passed away quite some time ago, so it's just myself and the dog. But and he sleeps at the foot of the bed. Now, if you can get past a 98-pound shepherd door, then I've got something for you. But all the years I've carried, which is probably close to 20 now, I've never had to draw down on a human being. I've killed a few water moccasins that were messing with my dog, but that's it. I mean, people have their imagination just goes wild with this. And I would submit if the one greatest thing we could do to stop shootings, whether they're school shootings or these mass shootings like we saw here in Texas at the Outlet Mall, stop playing politics with the issue. The left or the right, take a step back, stop playing politics with it, and just tell people the truth instead of trying to make it an issue.
Absolutely. But, unfortunately, that is not the world we currently live in. And that's the scary part, is that I don't know how at this point we disentangle the Second Amendment from the political left and political right. It must be something that we embrace fully as a nation, as a culture, exactly like our right to practice our own religion. I would say our right to free speech, but unfortunately, I think that is becoming politicized as well, and that's a little bit scary to me.
There's a whole new show right there. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
No, you're absolutely spot on. Listen, We're out of time. Emily Taylor is an attorney out of Houston. Houston, beautiful town. I used to live in the Woodlands decades ago, but she's with Walker and Taylor, a full-service criminal and civil defense firm. If you want more information from her or her firm, which focuses on gun law cases, again, it's Walker and Taylor law firm. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed talking with you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.